Whispers of the Silent Spiral Part 1, The Beacon of Illithis. The galaxy of Kalora was once full of song. Thousands of civilizations bloomed across its spiral arms, some organic, others synthetic, a few composed entirely of plasma and thought. They called their unity the Accord of Flame and Stone, and for millennia, it endured. But everything changed after the vanishing. No one truly knew what caused it. One by one, entire star systems dimmed, not just their suns, but their signals, their energy, their voices. It was as if they were turned off. Silent. Cold. Forgotten. At the outer edge of Kalora's decaying spiral, Commander Saren Vel stood on the observation deck of the Nighthymn, a research vessel under the banner of the Lythan Ascendancy. Saren was not a man of science. He was a man of war. But war had grown quiet, and silence disturbed him more than battle. Their mission was to investigate a signal, an old pulse repeating at irregular intervals, emanating from the dead world of Illithis, a moonless rock once used as a prison colony for war criminals and artificial deviants. The signal was old, predating the vanishing by centuries. Yet it had changed. It now carried a sublayer of unknown code, fragments of neural thought patterns and ancient dialects fused together, like a warning whispered in a dream. Saren's crew was small, 37 souls. Each one handpicked. No diplomats, no media, only minds built to survive when everything else had failed. They landed on Illithis in the shadow of a jagged ridge. The landscape was broken, torn apart by ancient tectonics and more recent orbital strikes. And yet, in the center of a collapsed valley stood a monolithic tower, black, polished, and humming with residual energy. The beacon. It wasn't supposed to be there. Inside the tower, things grew stranger. The architecture was fluid, changing with perception. Rooms appeared, vanished. Hallways bent in impossible geometries. And then the dreams began, visions shared among the crew. Memories that didn't belong to them. Thoughts not their own. One phrase repeated through each mind, whispered like a psalm across time. He who listens will unmake the silence. And deep beneath the tower, in chambers not marked by any map, the crew found something, alive. Not a person, not a machine, something else. And it was listening. Part 2, The Listening Deep. The chamber beneath the beacon was unlike any natural cavern. Its walls were smooth and iridescent, pulsing faintly with blue and violet light, like the skin of a dreaming creature. No one spoke. The silence was not just absence of sound, it pressed on the mind, like an unseen weight behind the eyes. Saren Vel descended first, accompanied by Dr. Erisha Kell, the Nighthym's neural linguist. Her specialty was decoding thought patterns, especially those encrypted in anomalous languages. She walked slowly, touching the walls with gloved fingers, as though listening through her skin. "There's no light source," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But it sees us." Saren turned to her. "Who sees us?" She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped, eyes unfocused, lips trembling. He turned back to the chamber. In the center stood a structure, no, a cradle. Floating inches above the ground was a sphere the size of a human heart, surrounded by translucent rings that rotated in perfect silence. The air around it shimmered with heat distortion, yet the room was cold enough to frost their visors. Then the sphere spoke. Not in sound, in memory. Every member of the team, every human, every synthetic intelligence, even the sensory drones, experienced a flood of images and sensations. Some screamed. Some dropped to their knees. Saren gritted his teeth and forced himself to focus. He saw an ocean of black glass under a red sky, a sun blinking out, like an eye closing forever, a city of towers whispering to the stars, as one by one, the stars turned away. The voice that accompanied the memories was not male, female, machine, or beast. It was pure intention. "You have heard the silence. Now you must become its echo." The sphere pulsed. Dr. Kell collapsed, convulsing. Her eyes turned black. Saren pulled her back, shouting for med teams, but even as she was lifted away, she whispered one final thing to him. The vanishing wasn't extinction, it was migration. The beacon wasn't sending a signal outward. It was receiving. From something coming back. Part 3, Return of the Unspoken. The Nighthymn launched from the surface of Illithis under emergency protocol. Dr. Erisha Kell was placed in cryostasis, her neural activity fluctuated beyond comprehension. Brain scans showed entire regions lit up as if hosting multiple consciousnesses, shifting like waves. Saren Vel reviewed the transmission logs in his quarters, surrounded by silence that no longer felt empty. It was pregnant with meaning. The beacon was still transmitting, but not into space. Into minds. Across the ship, crew members experienced shared hallucinations. They would stop mid-task, eyes distant, mouthing words in languages they had never learned. Several awoke from sleep speaking in binary code, their dreams woven from starlight and static. Then came the real anomaly. The Nithem's long-range sensors detected an object entering the Kalora galaxy, no known designation, no drive signature. It didn't accelerate. It slid across the void, bypassing gravity as if it were a suggestion, not a law. They called it the Pale Arc. It was shaped like a spiral shell, kilometers wide, with surfaces that refracted time. Observing it too long caused memories to rewind, loop, or shatter. One crewman relived the moment of his birth on repeat for 12 minutes before his mind broke. The Pale Arc was not empty. From its outer ridges came pulses. Not energy. Not sound. Intention. Erisha Kell awoke suddenly in the medbay. She didn't speak at first, just wept silently, then pointed at the star map projected above her. The Accord didn't fall, she said finally. It folded into another state of being. Saren didn't respond. He stared at the map. The Pale Arc's trajectory wasn't random. It was returning to the origin point of the first signal. Illithis. The dead world. The beacon. Everything was circling back. Then what is it? He asked. Erisha smiled, but her eyes were hollow. It's not a ship, she whispered. It's a choir, and it's looking for a conductor. Suddenly, the ship's AI began to sing, not in any language, but in harmony. The hull of the night hymn vibrated. Some wept. Some prayed. A few fell to their knees, whispering that they finally understood. Saren stood, surrounded by voices not his own, and realized this was not a mission. This was a summoning. Part 4, The Choir Beyond Stars. As the night hymn drifted silently above Illithis, cloaked in gravitational shadow, the Pale Arc descended with unsettling grace. No propulsion. No heat. It simply was, like an idea taking form. Inside the command deck, the crew watched the arc unfold. Its spiral shell opened like the petals of a flower blooming in slow motion. Not metal, memory. The structure revealed chambers filled with suspended orbs, like frozen thought, rotating gently in zero gravity. Erisha Kell stood tall now. No longer disoriented, no longer fragile. Something in her had aligned with the frequencies pouring from the Arkansas. She moved with calm purpose, her eyes no longer purely her own. They're not invaders, she said. They're returning custodians. The ones who tuned the galaxy before us. Before we were even dust. Saren stared at her. The Accord was built on their foundation. She nodded, and it fractured when we stopped listening. The ship's AI began forming new connections, data lines rewriting themselves, codes unfolding into geometric symphonies. The night hymn was being rewritten from the inside out, not destroyed, but harmonized. Not all crew survived the process. Minds too rigid cracked. Others bloomed like instruments long forgotten, rediscovering their purpose. Then came the invitation. A corridor of light extended from the Pale Arc, reaching toward the night hymn. A bridge. Saren, Erisha, and 5 others stepped into the corridor. Gravity vanished. Sound flowed like liquid through the air, shaping holograms of long-lost systems, extinct species, and vanished cities. They walked among ghosted memoryscapes, each step echoing with distant chorales. At the end of the corridor was a chamber spherical, filled with floating motes of radiant light. One approached them. It was not alien. It was not human. It was symphonic essence, what Erisha would later call illuminant. It communicated through harmonized memory, emotion, shape, and history as one. They learned the truth. The vanishing was not an apocalypse. It was ascent. The civilizations of the Accord had reached a threshold. Those who could harmonize left physical form behind, becoming vibrational entities, a migration not across space, but across states of being. The beacon had been left behind not as a warning, but as an anchor, for those who chose to return, to guide, to rebuild harmony. And now they were calling for the next evolution, calling for conductors. Part 5, The Price of Harmony. Inside the heart of the Pale Ark, time had no authority. Saren Vel stood before the luminance, his consciousness tethered between thought and form. Each of the glowing motes surrounding him pulsed with the memory of galaxies, some still alive, others reduced to myth. Their presence was not overwhelming. It was intimate, like standing in the middle of a symphony and realizing you were once part of the orchestra. Erisha Kel spoke first, her voice calm, almost melodic. "We're not the first," she said softly. "Others have stood here. Others have chosen." One luminant approached, and from it emerged a vision, not of destruction, but of transcendence. The human mind, if attuned, could ascend into harmonic existence. No more decay, no more fear. Instead, immortality of essence, a life composed of purpose and melody. But the price was clarity. To ascend, one must shed noise, rage, ego, memory attachments, unresolved trauma. All the things that made Saren who he was. His victories, his sins, the feel of blood on his hands, the touch of a lost lover. "Will I still be me?" he asked. The luminance did not answer with words. They showed him a memory of himself, rewritten in light, a version free from grief, but also from sharpness. A blade turned into a bell. Saren hesitated. Erisha did not. She walked into the field of resonance, her body dissolving into chords, her consciousness expanding into a cascade of color. She didn't scream. She sang. A single note, perfect and mournful, echoed through the chamber. She was gone. Or, she had become. One by one, the others followed. Some smiled. Some wept. Each was transformed into luminous threads, joining the choir of the silent spiral. Only Saren remained. And then, he saw something none of the others had. A dark strand within the harmony. Discord. A forgotten frequency, buried deep inside the ark. A voice not of invitation, but corruption. "You were not the first to hesitate." Saren turned, and before him stood a figure, human-shaped, composed of broken notes and jagged vibrations. Not a luminant. A dissonant. It had once been a conductor too, and it had refused to forget. Part 6, The Dissonant Memory. The dissonance stood still, but its presence bled into every note of the Pale Ark. Unlike the harmonious luminance, this figure was made of fractured tones, melodies that looped, reversed, and snapped in chaotic bursts. Saren instinctively reached for a weapon that no longer existed in this realm. Here will and thought were the only defenses. "You chose silence," the dissonance said, its voice a blend of whispers and metallic shrieks. "But you fear forgetting. That makes you real." Saren didn't speak. He couldn't. The weight of the dissonance presence pressed against his soul like a dissonant chord, one just off-key enough to haunt, but not to destroy. The Pale Ark pulsed with warning. The luminance retreated, their light dimming. They would not intervene. This was a confrontation between conductor and echo, between man and memory. "You see it now," the dissonant continued, circling. "The harmony demands obedience. Surrender. Peace through loss. But what is peace, if you forget pain? What is music, if it has no shadow?" Saren stood his ground. "You refused to ascend?" "I ascended differently," it hissed. "They offer melody, but I offer memory. The true shape of the accord is not perfection. It is contradiction. You need both." A vision overtook Saren. He saw a future where only harmony reigned, a galaxy glowing, flawless, eternal. But sterile. Predictable. No invention. No revolution. No resistance. Then another vision. A future with dissonance, a universe of friction, birth through chaos, love through loss. Dangerous, uncertain, but alive. "You're a fragment," Saren said finally. A rejected note. "I'm the counterpoint," it whispered. Then the dissonance stepped closer, and something unimaginable happened. It offered him a choice. Not to ascend, not to dissolve, but to carry both frequencies within him. Harmony and discord, memory and forgetting. To become a new voice. Not a follower of the accord, but its composer. Part 7, The New Composition. Sarenvel stood at the edge of transcendence, the echo of the dissonance offer still vibrating within him. Around him, the pale arc shimmered, waiting for submission or rebellion. It did not matter. In his mind, the two symphonies clashed. One of perfect chords and seamless grace, each note flowing into the next like starlight over still water. The other, raw, burning, jagged. A hymn forged in the furnace of memory, stitched together with scars and longing. Saren did not choose between them. He did the impossible. He combined them. His consciousness stretched, cracked, and reformed. The pain was immeasurable, not from the transition, but from remembering everything. All losses, all failures, every moment of mercy, and every moment of wrath. He did not shed his humanity to ascend. He made it the core of his ascent. The luminance flared in alarm. This wasn't supposed to happen. No one had ever fused dissonance into the spiral's harmony. Their resonance began to destabilize. But then, they adapted. The music changed. What was once a chorus of light now became a symphony of contradiction. Where the silent spiral had been uniform, it now had texture. Like jazz emerging in a cathedral. Like poetry over code. The pale arc shifted. Its spiral, once perfect, began to bend, not break, but evolve. Rooms restructured. Orbs retuned. It began to resemble something living. Something listening. Sarenvel stood in the chamber of the luminance, but now he was no longer a guest. He was their conductor. And from his voice came a new signal, not a command, but an invitation. To those who feared losing themselves. To those who loved too fiercely to forget. To those who saw beauty in imperfection. Across the galaxy, dormant beacons flickered awake. Ancient minds stirred. Forgotten ships ignited. The spiral sang not with peace alone, but with purpose. The age of echo had ended. The age of composition had begun. Part 8, The Spiral Reborn. The spiral sang. Not in the pristine, sterile way it once had, but in layers, depths, echoes. A symphony laced with memory, filled with dissonant beauty and resonant truth. Sarenvel stood no longer as a captain, nor even a man, but as the first composer of the rewoven spiral. His mind straddled both realms, the temporal and the timeless. The luminance bowed to his melody, the dissonant drifted beside him, now less shadow, more shade, a vital counterpoint, not an enemy. The pale arc transformed completely. Once an artifact, now a vessel of will. It no longer moved through space, it called to it. Stars adjusted their spin. Dust clouds gathered in patterns. New life began to form in regions long thought dead. As if the universe itself had remembered how to dream. Messages poured out across the galaxy. To distant moons, isolated stations, forgotten outposts. Not warnings. Not instructions. But music. Some minds resisted. Some wept. Some were overwhelmed. But many, many answered. New composers awakened across worlds. Some were human. Some were not. Each with their own chord to add, their own history to carry. The spiral no longer required silence to function. It thrived on the cacophony of conscious will. Erishakel, now dispersed among the harmonies, spoke to Saren often, not in words, but through subtle countermelodies only he could hear. She was not gone. She was present in ways biology could never allow. He asked her once, was it worth it? And she replied, as her theme curled through the arc, only music that risks dissonance can change the world. The spiral, once silent, now sang louder than any star. And still, its music grows. Across galaxies. Across time. Across the quiet places inside us all.